All right, so here's the deal. We did some combo decks, right? We did the Maokai Mill. We did Gangplank, Twisted Fate with that crazy, drawing fleeting cards. We did Fiora. We did some mid-range with the Scouts. We did some aggro. What about control? Well, now we got the big brain decks coming down the pipe. And the first one we're going to go over is Karma Ezreal. So for you long-time Legends of Runeterra players out there, and by long time I mean basically you played in the beta, you will 100% recognize this deck. It is basically the same thing as the Karma Ezreal decks of old. However, there are a slew of new cards that are just, God, they're such better replacements than the cards that were initially in the Karma Ezreal deck. Noxus Ezreal and Freeze Ezreal were a lot more, competitive as well alongside this Karma Ezreal deck before. Now, Karma Ezreal just kind of blows the rest of them out of the water, in my opinion. So if you're new to the channel and you're looking for some big brain decks, hit the subscribe button. You will not regret it. And as always, we're going to start with the deck overview. We're going to go through the deck real quick and then get into 2 games. All right, so first and foremost, I feel like I constantly am forgetting to mention this, so I'm going to start mentioning it in the videos. If you want the deck code for this deck, link is in the description below. And if you want a link just to check it out real quick, all these decks moving forward are going to be on decksofruneterra.com. That link is also in the description below. And if you check it out or you use the deck code, go ahead and give me a like on this video. Hopefully this video and the deck code helps you get to that rank that you've been struggling to get to. So with that said, let's get into the actual deck. And as you can see, for those of you who are not familiar with the deck, we have 3 Karma and 3 Ezreal, and the win condition is to get Ezreal leveled up. Theoretically, with a Karma on the field, that would be the best situation for you to get. A leveled up Karma plus a leveled up Ezreal means a whole lot of spell slinging, and that means a whole lot of card advantage, as well as potentially just killing your opponent outright. You have things like Chump Wump to add 2 1-cost burst spells to your hand. So if you have 2 of those, plus 1 Karma on the field, plus an Ezreal, playing both actually does 8 damage to the opponent's face. And then obviously you have other spells you can play to do damage or trigger Ezreal's effect. So some of the new additions to this deck, specifically Eye of the Dragon. This card is absolutely phenomenal against aggro decks. We actually posted another video, one of the first decks I had made, revolving around Eye of the Dragon. Different deck. It wasn't an Ezreal deck. It was Lee Sin and Fizz, I believe. But overall, the whole point of this card is to just play spells, get free 2/1 lifesteal tokens on the field, and those do work against aggro decks. Again, you're restoring your life, you're creating chump blockers. It's just so good. Plus, as far as tempo is concerned, this does give you an attuned mana, so it really only costs 1 mana early in the game, and that 1 extra spell mana is very helpful in turns 3, 4, and 5 against aggro or mid-range decks. On top of that, we have, I'm going to go over Retreat in a second. We also have Concussive Palm, which is incredible, again, versus aggro matchups. Somebody has a leveled up Draven. It's obvious, or just a regular Draven, and you can't kill it. Concussive Palm is great for that. You can stun it. It doesn't trigger his spinning axe effect, so they don't get additional card advantage. Awesome card. Obviously awesome in general against even mid-range decks. You can stun something preemptively, like a Cythria, to avoid the attack Fearsome +1/+1 going off. And, many other large units that are similar to that in other mid-range decks. Deep Meditation. Oh, man. This card, holy bejesus, is so good. I mean, listen, it's a 4-mana draw 2, okay? Might not be a 3-mana draw 2 like every other freaking card game has, but this can be a 2-mana draw 2. So, in my eyes, this is better than a 3-mana draw 2. As long as you cast 2+ spells, which, as you'll see, is also the same sort of effect that Eye of the Dragon has, you'll be able to play this for 2. And one of the good things about Deep Meditation is this allows you to combo even if you don't have the combo. So, like, let's say you do have Ezreal and Karma on the field, and you're kind of in a situation where you know your opponent is going to win next turn, or you know you have to go in order to win the game, or in order to give yourself a chance to win the game. You can play this, draw 2 spells. Now you can start chaining stuff. If you have a Karma on the field, this is cost 2 it could cost 2 if you play 2 spells the turn before. Draw 4 spells with a Karma. That's insane. Okay, plus you're getting 2 triggers of Ezreal off. So that's 4 damage right there and 4 spells in your hand that could potentially get more Ezreal triggers. And as far as other cards from the new set, we have a Retreat. I personally like this card. It's, again, good against aggro. You can save your early Eye of the Dragon if they try get exciting it or something like that or similar. And it's also good for saving against, control decks and mid-range decks. If they do kill your Ezreal or your Karma, it's good for recalling it just for the sake of saving it. In the case of Ezreal, you can replay it with the return. And it's also good for Shadow Assassin. You can obviously replay the Shadow Assassin. And again, like I said, Eye of the Dragon. So, awesome deck. I'm not crazy about Yone in this deck. Sometimes I take it out, especially if I'm seeing a lot more mid-range, a lot more aggro and control matchups and less mid-range. Yone is very good against more mid-range Bannerman Scout type deals. So we'll see how the meta shifts. It depends on where you are in the ladder. I'm going to shut up now. Let's get into the 2 Ezreal Karma games. All right, and let us get into it. We have 2 games here. First one is actually aggro. Second is control. The reason I did that is because, generally speaking, these are the 2 worst matchups for the deck. Control versus control could go either way. It's really whether or not you can outplay your opponent. And aggro is basically supposed to wreck control. That's kind of the point of the deck. Mid-range, Bannerman, Scouts, stuff like that, usually you can handle pretty decently easy. Depends on your opponent, depends on what you draw, but generally speaking, this deck will beat Scouts and Bannerman. Now, our opponent starts off with a very good start here, much better than ours. Does a 3 damage first turn with the 1-drop and has the Saboteur follow-up. So, I know, thinking to myself, all right, we're in a little bit of shit here, right? Might need to play this Rummage. And just a tip generally to players, when you are already looking at the board state and the game matchup and a lot of different, variables, and you're like, shit, I'm already behind, and you have something like a Rummage in hand, you need to start looking for options. There is no need to save that Rummage and wait for a Chump Wump to combo with the Shrooms or anything like that. Generally, that's when you want to play the Rummage, is playing a Chump Wump and then discarding the 2 Shrooms with the Rummage. You got to do what you got to do. I swear to God, every time I play a Rummage without the Shrooms, I end up drawing into a Chump Wump with the Rummage. It happens every time. It feels so bad, but trust me when I tell you, it is worth it. And you'll see exactly why here. I actually end up drawing much more quickly into 2 Static Shocks. These 2 Static Shocks literally win me this game. They are what allow me to stabilize. So I know my opponent is going into an attack turn. I know that I will have plenty of mana to deal with the board. I'll now have 8 to play both Static Shocks, right? This is exactly why I didn't play the Thermo Beam the turn before. I decided to hold on to it. So I preemptively play 1 Static Shock here so I can get the draw and see what I actually get from the draw first before my opponent attacks. I could have waited to play both for just, his open attack. But the other thing that playing the Static Shock ahead of time does is very critically avoid the 2 Legion Saboteurs from getting their attack effect off when they attack. My Static Shock doesn't really do much if I'm killing them after they attack because I'm still taking the damage from that effect. So it feels really bad when that does happen. And also, after playing both in that turn, now I have the Eye of the Dragon. Gets me a Lifesteal token. So you can see things starting a little bit, to turn back in my favor. It's a very good feeling. The Attune, again, giving me that extra mana to use the tools that I have in my hand. Now, this is another critical point here where I have to actively do something. I need to use every bit of mana that I have. Mana is something that I have against my opponent as an advantage, right? You're the control deck. You have mana and you have card advantage. My opponent has damage and tempo, okay? I need to use my advantages to my advantage. So in this case, I am exhausting everything I can. I use the Get Excited to negate the Imperialist effect because I'm so low now. It's at the point where I need to be negating as much damage as humanly possible. I cannot allow that effect to go through. Even though I could think, hey, I could negate a Noxian Fervor that comes out next instead of the Imperial Demolitionist. That prevents 3, not 2. No. When you're below 10 health against an aggro deck, you now turn into always block everything, even if it's a unit you don't want to trade. Always kill everything. You got to save as much damage as possible. And then from then on, I am able to stabilize, and my opponent actually realizes that, so they just surrender. They only have like 2 cards in their hand. So, all right, now we get the control matchup. So this one's going to be a little bit more interesting. You know, I could sit here and talk about what you keep in the mulligan for the control matchup, but it's honestly very dependent on the matchup and dependent on how you play. Again, when you're playing against a control deck with something like a Karma Ezreal deck, it's very much going to come down to what cards you're saving, what you're able to outplay your opponent with. And what I mean by, obviously the outplaying your opponent is relative to skill, so there's not much you can do about that. If you're bad at the game, you're bad at the game. I don't know what you want. I don't know what you want me to tell you. This is one of the harder decks to play, so I'm going to throw that out there. So especially if you're playing a mirror match or another control deck, this is one of the more difficult decks to figure out and play with. So take that into consideration. Don't get frustrated because you're losing. Because you're trying to figure out the deck. You got to learn. You got to take the hits as they come. And eventually you'll start to see some of the finer intricacies of the deck. So what I mean by holding cards in particular is things like deny, okay? In this matchup, all right, let me explain the deny first, right? You typically want to save deny for larger cards. So let's just use a really easy example. If somebody is playing Ruination, you will usually, dependent upon the situation, want to save the deny for that Ruination. It's a huge mana swing. It's a huge tempo swing. And you prevent all your units from dying, right? Makes sense. Seems like an easy choice. In this matchup, right, deny is always going to be important. Deny is just a good card in general. But you're going to want to additionally save something like a Static Shock. So why is Static Shock important? Well, in this matchup, we're playing Keg Control. This is actually one of the first Keg Control decks that I've seen. Keg Control plays Kegs, obviously, and the Kegs have 1 health. You do not want to be the one actively killing the Kegs unless you know your opponent has no mana left. So as you can see here, perfect example. He plays Make It Rain. Now I play the Static Shock. That trade feels so good for me. Feels incredible, right? I get a 2-for-1 on the token and the Kegs, and I get a draw. And now his Make It Rain, which he thought was going to clear 2 units, now only has a chance to clear 1. So that right there was a very big swing turn for me. Another thing that you want to keep in mind with this deck, and this is really in any matchup, not so much aggro because you probably won't even make it to the point of playing Karma, but you want to only play Karma when you know she's going to live. So one of the crucial mana breakpoints in the Bilgewater Shadow Isles classes, or I should just say Shadow Isles, is 5. That's because Grasp of the Undying and Withering Wail are all 5 mana, or both 5 mana. So you want to be making sure that when you play Karma, as I just did that turn, your opponent has less than 5 mana. He only had 4. Now, even if he has Grasp in his hand to kill my Karma, I will have mana to respond. So now I'm constantly playing around his moves. Okay, does he have mana to kill my Karma? If he does, can I expend all my mana? Should I save my mana? You know, so, and eventually this leads to the Karma actually leveling up here, which now is just a huge advantage. So same idea here. The reason I'm playing this Scrap Dash Assembly, which kind of seems just like a weird, useless card right now, is I don't want to expend too much mana to the point where I can't use anything to save my Karma right now, because I do want to keep my Karma on the board. Now, I do have another Karma in my hand. So there is the consideration that, okay, if this Karma dies, I can just replace her. So I am thinking about that as well. And you'll actually see here, again, with the Glimpse of the Undying, this is another thing you want to, or sorry, Glimpse of the Undying, Jesus. Glimpse from the Beyond. I'm pretty sure that's the card name. You want to be saving cards that can potentially negate Glimpse from Beyond, too. That's another mana breakpoint, so to speak, is 2 mana. As long as your opponent has 2 mana, there's a chance they can play Glimpse from the Beyond. A lot of times your opponent is going to be playing around you being able to negate Glimpse from the Beyond. So you need to play around that. So this is what I mean. It's a lot of mind games back and forth. And as you'll see in a second here too, with the end of the game, the last turns where you are actually assembling your combo, which is Karma and Ezreal, and a bunch of stuff going face, that's actually a critical turn that you have to really organize correctly to make sure that, again, your opponent doesn't have lifesteal like Grasp of the Undying or Withering Wail to prevent your combo from going off. So Another interesting interaction that you just saw, you can play a burst spell Shroom just to pass the turn back over to your opponent. Generally speaking, if you're playing with a more experienced opponent, they should be able to read that the only reason you're playing a mushroom is for the sake of passing initiative over to them, and they'll probably pass back. So that's something to consider. Now I'm at the point in the game where I know I'm going to get to the combo soon. I have a lot of draw in my hand. I need to start worrying about getting him down to a decent amount of life that I can handle in one turn. Because he does have heal. Like, he just played a Withering Wail. Now he's back up to 13. I need to keep him, generally speaking, around like 8 to 10 so that I only have to do 5 triggers of Ezreal, or possibly even less, because I need to prepare for him possibly playing 10 mana's worth of cards and healing 6 in one turn. So that's what's going on in my head right now, because he could play 2 Grasp, a Grasp and a Withering Wail, 2 Withering Wail. Those are all things I need to prepare for. Now, he plays the red card on my Karma that I already have on the field. I do not any longer have another Karma because I shuffled it into my deck playing her champion spell. So now I'm trying to do as much damage as possible and just get as much value out of the spells that I have in my hand that I can get 2 casts off of with the leveled Karma while I can. And I actually get incredible value here because I'm also able to kill his Twisted Fate. I do a lot more damage to his Nexus. Now, even if he plays 6 damage, 6 healing, he's only going to get up to 11. So now I'm able to play the Ezreal, and you can kind of see the writing on the wall here. This is the last turn I'm talking about, so I do have to be careful. I only play the 1 Mystic Shot and don't spend all my mana so that he cannot have the last move. That's very critical in these matchups. You have to take that into consideration. So I just play the Mystic Shot. I don't deny the Gangplank effect. I keep the 5 mana. He plays 5 mana. Grasp of the Undying only has 3 mana left. Now I know I can go in. Now I know I'm good to go. I even have the Rummage as backup. And that is the game. And that is Ezreal Karma. I hope you guys enjoyed that. Honestly, after doing that, I realize there's a lot to go over in control decks. So I want to know your guys' opinion. If you want more of a just a tutorial, I guess, so to speak, on control decks in general, or different interactions like I was going over, like passing back over to your opponent for initiative and stuff like that, put it in the description below. Tell me what kind of videos you guys want. I would love to hear your opinion. And obviously, I do this for you guys, so I gotta be putting out videos you guys want to see. So let me know what you think. As always, everybody, stay healthy, stay positive. I hope shit just works for you, and peace out.